You're not getting any younger, so
So say yes to everything.
Hey, you. Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Today's episode is brought to you by Jen and Juice Coaching by yours truly. For the past 5 years, I've worked with over 100 people to help them feel, less stuck. Whether you're looking to change careers, start a side hustle, or just get a strategy for your life, head on over to jenglantz.com/coaching and you can find out about my 1-hour coaching specials that will help you feel like you can finally cross those things off your to-do list and start whatever kind of project, life change, or dream that you have. Hey, any youngers, it's me, your host, Jen Glantz. Welcome back to another episode of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. Did you know it? You're still not getting any younger, but I am so grateful that it's you and you're here listening to this episode. Over the past couple of months, 2020 will go down as a lot of things, but it will go down as the year where I had to learn how to cook. I feel like in years past, I got away with not cooking. I would do takeout or go to local restaurants, but with the pandemic and being stuck at home, I felt like I had no choice but to get good in the kitchen, which is something Adam and we did a lot of trial and error. We did a lot of mistakes. We had a lot of nights where we threw out our food because it was just not edible and had peanut butter and jelly. But I think one thing I don't really ever talk about is that I try to be a relatively healthy eater. I do have this brand where people know me as the person who eats pizza. But the truth is, I do not eat pizza more than once or twice a week. I really make a point to, especially during the week, to eat pretty healthy. I've been a lifelong vegetarian. This is also something I hardly tell people, but I'm telling you, I've been a vegetarian since I was 6 years old. I have not had a taste of meat since then. It was a personal choice. I'm an incredibly stubborn Aries, so at 6 years old, I made a lot of personal choices that I'm still sticking with. But I don't eat meat, so I have to make sure, especially because of that I do find ways to stay healthy. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that that's something you really need to research and understand. I got away with eating pizza every day or pasta every day when I was younger, but now I'm in my early 30s and being healthy, eating healthy food matters to me because I find that it changes my energy level. I find that it just helps me when I'm out and about. I find that it helps me sleep better. I also find that it helps me look better. I've had acne all my life, and a lot of that was really because of maybe the food that I ate along with my hormones, but I noticed when I cut out things like sugar and dairy, my whole entire skin changes. So I've really built an intense relationship with understanding food and trying really hard to be healthy. I haven't mastered it yet, but I am currently and always continuously working on it. Which leads me to this week's guest. L.A. Dunn. She is the founder of Black Girls Eat, which is a blog and a website filled with recipes and resources. But what you should know about her is that she wasn't always somebody who understood healthy food. For many years, L.A., she just ate what she wanted until one day she wasn't feeling very well. And she went to the doctor and they ran all these tests and they realized that a lot of what was making her not feel great could have been the inflammation caused by the food she was eating. That's when she took it upon herself to educate herself on what a plant-based diet would look like. And once she learned how easy it could be and how much the way you eat changes the way you feel, she decided to put herself out there and educate other people all around this topic. Here's something you should know about LA. Her personality is an incredible burst of energy. She's somebody that you're going to listen to and really want to be friends with in real life, and I recommend you reach out to her and you follow her because she rocks. I met LA in person a couple of times, and we've stayed in touch ever since. I am so proud of all she's done with Black Girls Eat. I'm also really proud of how she breaks down her journey in this episode. As always, if you are a fan of the show, please head to iTunes, rate and review. It always helps us bring on incredible guests just like LA. And as always, come hang out with us in the secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. I am so waiting for you there.
I'm so excited to have you on this podcast. Usually I write down like a ton of questions, but I'm like, with you, I don't even need to, because I just feel like you're going to say just too much good stuff. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, listen, like Black Girls Eat, I could have, I was going through my own health stuff, trying to figure it out. I ended up meeting an amazing rheumatologist, Dr. Maggie Cadet, here in New York City. And after going to a few doctors who kind of like, when you get to a certain age, they just want to throw you a bottle of Advil, like, hey, just good luck with that, But when I saw Dr. Cadet, I said, listen, like, this is ridiculous, the amount of pain that I'm in from my head to my toes, my fingers, my ankles, like, what's really going on? And she just took me so seriously. And I think women need that. Like, we need to be taken seriously when we go to the doctor. I think a lot of times we take on a lot of pain from everything from child bearing to, just having to always keep it going, we got to work, we got to hustle, we got to grind. And so the fact that she really took me seriously and ordered, like, I swear to God, thousands of dollars in tests. She was like, when we're done with this blood work, we're going to have an answer. And I was really grateful. At first I was really nervous when the results came back, because I didn't, who wants that? Like, I didn't want anything negative to show up. And she was like, well, good news. You don't have lupus. You don't have an autoimmune disease. You don't have cancer. She was just like, but what you really do have is some really high inflammation markers. And we don't know why, and I started investigating, like, first of all, inflammation is no bueno for your body, right? It creates like a petri dish for all other kinds of problems. And so I started investigating on my own. I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it. And I somehow I went down the rabbit hole into what causes inflammation in your body. And high on the list was meat products, meat, cheese, milk, behind that was coffee, alcohol, but definitely meat and dairy were high on the list. And then I somehow I went somewhere and they were talking about plant-based nutrition. And I thought that was really interesting because, I'm from the Bronx, my family's from the South, my husband's family's from the Caribbean. So, there's plant eating, but not necessarily plant-centered lifestyle, and it sounded like something that really cool, healthy people in California do, and I always joke, I know I go to farmers markets and, I'm there for the Honeycrisp apples. I'm not necessarily there to like, to really shop, But as I was going along, I found a course at eCornell online, 3 courses in plant-based nutrition. And because I'm a lifelong learner. I love to learn, and I love history, and I love just understanding how things are put together. And what I learned in the plant-based nutrition class is that this is not a new thing. People have been eating this way for many, many years. And as a matter of fact, in places where people live the longest, they actually are having a plant-based diet. And so I enjoyed the coursework. I enjoyed learning about protein. People are very concerned about, like, if you're not eating actual meat, where are you getting protein from? And I was happy to find out that I could have protein through tofu and quinoa and, different lentils and beans. And I think just informing myself made me feel more empowered. And then I was like, I can't be the only Black girl who's on this journey. There have to be other women like me who want to make healthier food choices, and they just don't know where to begin. And that was the birth of Black Girls Eat.
What's so interesting is not only did you seek out this health journey just because you weren't really feeling the best you could feel, but one of the things you had to change was one of the hardest things to change, which is what you eat. And we get into these habits where we find these foods, we have these routines. It's hard to part ways with the kinds of food we're putting in our mouth. So what did you have to go through to suddenly implement more of these, what seem like boring and bland plant-based foods, but in fact could not be boring and bland? Like, How did you start this journey of adding in the quinoa and the healthier types of food?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, my typical breakfast used to be, 4 pancakes, turkey sausage, scrambled eggs with cheese. That was typical. This morning I had spinach, quinoa, mushrooms, and a scramble of just egg, which has become one of my favorite food products. Yeah, I think I started taking a look at like, all right, what am I eating for breakfast? I think breakfast was the hard one. And really started looking around at recipes and trying new things. I'll tell you my quinoa story. My husband, he's so beautiful. When I first saw the words quinoa, I was in the supermarket saying quinoa, and my husband was like, honey, I love you, but it's called quinoa. Like, you gotta get it together. And I remember buying it and taking it home. And I've been making rice like my whole life, and I was like, well, this looks like rice. And I'm here to tell you that it's not rice. Rice cooks in about 30 minutes. Quinoa cooks in like about 12 minutes. So my first pot of quinoa, I had to throw the whole pot away with the quinoa and the top and the pot. The whole thing burned. So I think it was just trial and error, like literally reading recipes and coming home and trying stuff. Which was a little nerve-wracking because I grew up in a household where you didn't want to waste food, and you didn't have the luxury to just try things. So I really started with recipes and just being a little courageous. And quinoa ended up being the first thing. And I learned how to make quinoa, which you can just toss it on a salad or whatever. But then I learned to make a quinoa, black bean, brown rice patty, right? And you just start to like advance how you're using the products. Breakfast was a big challenge for me, but just food in general, like everything we were eating. And I have to say, I have a very supportive household. I talk to a lot of women who are making a meal for themselves, and then they're making a meal for their husband, and they're making a meal for their children. But I actually live in a really supportive household. And we just started stripping away things one at a time. When I realized I wasn't going to be eating cheeseburgers, I wasn't going to be eating turkey bacon and turkey sausage in the morning, and started looking for, like, it's really cool to me to have a bowl of lentil soup and a salad for lunch, which never happened before. And I realized not only am I eating well, I'm not hungry. Like, I think there's a big misconception that if you're eating mostly plants that you're going to be starving. You'd be surprised to find that a lot of plants have a lot of protein, and protein helps you from, being hungry. So it definitely is a day-by-day process. I always tell people I'm definitely a plant-based advocate. I encourage people to pursue a life of mostly plants. I realize it may be impossible sometimes. You get to that 4th of July barbecue and, the cheeseburger's calling you. But I definitely have been having fun. Like yesterday, we made a salad with greens, watermelon, basil, and like this amazing lime garlic dressing. And I was like, whoa, so just having a lot of fun too, mixing things up. But you definitely have to have a little bit of courage
Yeah.
and a big sense of humor. You got to forgive yourself too for the days that, it just doesn't work out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think like your journey is so incredible. And I think it's also, like you said, it's helpful when people are supportive. I know I've been a lifelong vegetarian since I was 6 years old. And I've been in situations where people are judgmental of that, who question, how do you get your protein? Who question all of these things. That's none of their business.
Right.
Yeah, but having that support system, I think, helps. So what would you say to the person who wants to change their lifestyle, their eating habit, but they're surrounded by people who don't, who just want the cheeseburger?
Absolutely. I say, don't tell them anything. Don't tell them what you're doing. If you've got to make meatloaf but you're going to make the sides, you're going to make the squash on the side, or the roasted sweet potatoes, or the green beans and the brown rice, make the meatloaf and put the meatloaf on the table and take your sides and go enjoy yourself. Right. Because a lot of times I think we look for validation from the people we care about. Oh, I'm trying this new thing. And you tell your best friend, or you tell your husband, or you tell your mother. And that invites all that criticism, which is tough because you're already in kind of shaky, insecure space. And then you want the people you care for and who care for you to give you like that stamp of approval. And it's just a bad habit. I say, take 30 days and do it on your own. and then gradually let people know where you are. Because I remember that feeling exactly. I would go places and people would say, oh, Leslie Ann can't have that. Oh, LA can't eat that, you know, and I'm saying, just be your normal selves. Like, I'm going to manage me, right? I don't need you to do anything different. And I also think, yeah, and it's tough. And I think I said this before, in Black families, in particular my family, you know, you get a famous reputation for how great you cook. You know, it's like people are waiting for Thanksgiving because they can't wait to, you know, taste your wares. And so when you introduce plant-based nutrition, the first thing people say, like, well, is it going to be as good as it used to be? You know, am I going to be starving on Christmas because you're feeding us tofu? Like, what's going on? So there's definitely a lot of pressure. And I think people also just feel like they're looking in the mirror. They're looking at you. Like, you're making a decision about the health, the food choices you're making and your decision to live a healthier life. I think it almost naturally makes people think like, well, what about me? And it doesn't have anything to do with anyone else. It's your personal choice. And so you don't need anyone's seal of approval. I give you permission to keep your own very 30-day secret, and give it a try. And of course, you could always hit me up at The Real Black Girls Eat on Instagram.
I absolutely love, and we talked about this, I love that your handle is The Real Black Girls Eats. That's because you legitimately have copycats. That's how incredible.
Like, that's
you
insane.
are.
Like, I'm so grateful. You know, the thing about becoming a blogger, writer, influencer is I'm a creative. And this idea that I had to create a company called Black Girls Eat and pay an attorney and get a New York State recognized LLC and, you know, pay for a trademark, you know, with the United States Patent Trade Office, you know, Trademark Office, you know, that's something that you don't think about when you just want to make really cool recipes and connect with people. But it is a business, and you do have to take care of the business part. And there are lots of folks hashtagging Black Girls Eat, you know, in the social media space. And so there was actually a group of women who I reached out to see if they would release the Instagram called Black Girls Eat. I said, hey, you know, this is a platform I'm developing. I'm hoping to uplift and educate women in our community, you know, and I wrote this really beautiful, probably in their eyes, sappy note. And I got a resounding, and basically said, would you release Black Girls Eat, you know, on Instagram? And they were like, no. And I was like, okay, well, then I guess I got to be The Real Black Girls Eat. And there you have it.
You definitely see, though, that there is such a need for the education you're providing people. And, you know, one of the things I'm dying to know, and I would love to do this with you, is I want to go grocery shopping with you. And
yes.
I ask you this because what are your tips? I know some people, they go to the grocery stores and they head right to the packaged items. They load up on the frozen meals. What are your grocery shopping tips?
Yes. So my first tip, and it's so funny because prior to COVID, I was absolutely going to the supermarket and to farmers markets with folks. And I love that. My first tip is to have a list, to sit down in your kitchen or your living room or wherever you are and think about what you want to eat that week. I think having a list helps you from like cereal shopping, not just the cereal, like, you know, crunchy cereal, but just like a cereal killer. Like, you're just running around the supermarket picking things up. So my first tip is sit down, think about what you want to eat, what you want to make for that particular week or that particular time period, and make your list. Then secondly, when you get, and also look through the brochures or whatever you need to do. And when you get to the supermarket, number one, and I learned this really early, we want to stay on the perimeter of the supermarket. Right? We want to stay all on the outside. So typically when you walk into almost any supermarket, the produce section begins on your right or your left somewhere. And so I encourage us to shop in the perimeter, because the stuff that's in the middle, that's all the processed, all the stuff that's in a box, and that's all the stuff that I'm trying to stay away from. You know, I don't know if I said this before, but like processed foods, you know, there's a lot that happens to them before they come to your table. And a lot of what's done is just not good for your body, especially if you're someone like me who's really not clear about why I have so much inflammation in my body. I'm questioning everything, right? I'm questioning the pasta sauce that's in the jar already. You know, there's no accident, right? There's a reason why these things last for 3 years on the shelf, right? Or 2 years on the shelf. So definitely show up with your list and shop the perimeter. Buy fresh when you can. People get into this big debate with me about, should I get organic? Should I not get organic? So there's a great site called EWG, Environmental Working Group, that I love. They give a lot of information about which produce necessarily needs to be organic or not, right? And so like strawberries are like number one on the list because apparently they're made with so many pesticides. But apparently you might get away with like not having organic avocados because they're so hard on the outside. It may not be so bad. So I feel like that's another barrier for people when they're shopping. You know, something organic can cost $1 a pound and something that's not organic can be 22 cents a pound. And so I always tell people shop according to what you can afford, but don't like torture yourself. Like do a little research, but don't torture yourself.
Yeah, and that tip is so great. I always try to stick to the perimeter and I try to spend the longest amount of time there. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'll go to the packaged chips and the other stuff. So,
And
it's just such a good tip to avoid going straight to the frozen pizzas and all of that. So
absolutely.
it's a game changer.
Yeah, it's a game changer. I had a group of girlfriends. We picked one item a month that we love to buy ready-made that we would make on our own. And mine was tortilla chips. I love tortilla chips. I can eat nachos. If you put me on a desert island by myself, if I have a corn tortilla chip, like I'm in heaven. And so when COVID happened, you know, in the supermarket, the first thing to go was all the chips. And what I realized is that a bag of ready-made tortilla chips is like $4.89, $4.99 a bag, whatever it is, depending on where you shop. But the tortillas, the actual corn tortillas, the package, there were 80 of them in a package for like $2.29. And so I came home and I took those corn tortillas and I cut them into triangles and tossed them in some oil and some salt with some cumin and some lime. And I had my own chips. And I have not bought a bag of chips since.
Okay, I haven't had lunch yet, so this conversation, you've been saying lime and garlic and on watermelon, and I'm just salivating. Yeah, exactly. But it's a great tip, and I think, you know, you and your website and everything you put out there, all the content you put out there is just proof on how easy some of these things are. You know, I love the videos you put on Instagram that just sort of showcase like, look, this is a vegetable. I got it for $2. I seasoned it, and look how amazing it is. And I think that takes down the barrier of like, you have to be rich and you have to be, you know, a cooking genius to be able to do some of this.
Oh my God, Jen, you're so right. Because when I entered the food space, I was overwhelmed by the clinical stuff. Like people are so highbrow. And then there was this other like vegan world where it was like, if you weren't detoxing yourself to death, you couldn't be in the club. You know, there's definitely, you know, people who are just so, I think people forget about regular people like me who are kind of like peeking in, like, what's this world called vegan, vegetarian? You know, can you let me in? Because that can just all be overwhelming, you know. Oh, you should drink sea moss, or you should, you know, take chlorine tablets. I mean, it's like a whole thing. And I just like, hold on a second. So I'm definitely happy, you know, that people come to Black Girls Eat. They feel like I'm their homegirl. I'm like their sister, their cousin, their best friend. We can go to the supermarket together and figure these things out. And that makes me really, really happy. You know, people use the term, you know, it's so approachable, but really, like, I can't imagine being in the food space any other way than being of service to people and being honest about the fact that I'm trying to figure it out at the same time as you. And I may have a few more answers, but I don't have all the answers. And I think that makes me happy because then I don't need to be fraudulent. I don't have to pretend to be anything that I'm not. I can actually say, you know, I don't really know, but let me check into that. Right?
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And I love your honesty and I love your personality. And I want to end this interview like we end them all. So I'm going to ask you to fill in the blank. Ready for this? You're not getting any younger, so
say yes to everything.
I love that. Is there anything you've said yes to recently that you're happy that you did?
Besides this podcast? This is my very first podcast interview, so thank you.
Well, you know what? You are just going to gear yourself up for many more because you were awesome. And I want you, before we officially end, to tell everyone listening where they can find out more about you and Black Girls Eat.
Yes, absolutely. So please visit the website at blackgirlseat.com. You can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at The Real Black Girls Eat. And you can definitely check out the Black Girls Eat podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. I am recording right now so that I could get back into new sessions for August.
I love it. You are incredible. Thank you so much for your advice.
Hey, you. Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.